Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Dario Conci, and welcome to the first of a series of webinars whereby we, Oxford, will be sharing why in a COVID and post-COVID world, we believe that Hong Kong is best placed to pursue the opportunities offered by Asia. If during the presentations you have any questions, feel free to type those questions in the GoToWebinar panel. In our opinion, Hong Kong's resilience and capability of recovering from crisis, its cultural and business connectivity that transformed into the most efficient crossroad of trade and investments in Asia, coupled with a government determined to simplify and facilitate, will continue to propel in Asia Hong Kong as the beacon of economic progress and freedom. We are proud that today the most dynamic and outward-oriented of the Hong Kong government agencies, Invest Hong Kong, will be presenting alongside with us, highlighting the strategy and the vision for Hong Kong's future, and sharing the insights about the thriving startup ecosystem. And finally, giving us the answers as to why opting for Hong Kong. Presenting for Invest Hong Kong, we will have Charles Ng, Associate Director, based in Hong Kong. Thereafter, Mr. Luca De Leonardis, who is the Head of Investment Promotion based in Australia, and Andrew Davis, Head of Investment Promotion based in the UK. I'll hand over to you, Charles.
Good afternoon and good evening and good morning to some of you because you're in different time zones here. Very welcoming, I believe, audiences from Hong Kong, also from Australia and the UK, New Zealand. I'm Charles Ng. I'm Associate Director General of Invest Hong Kong. What I'd like to do in the next 8 or 10 minutes or so to give you a bit of a sort of a snapshot about Hong Kong, to echo some of the things that Dario just mentioned earlier. Of course, Hong Kong we've had our fair share in terms of the COVID pandemic, and we were one of the cities that at the forefront. We started quite early on this and the curve, and now we are actually starting to recover. And this week and next week we will start. We're still keeping social distancing and all these good measures, wearing a face mask and so on. But the city is opening back up and the businesses are back up. We never really went through a complete lockdown. However, we had a lot of measures to ensure that we would minimize the impact. And of course, like every other cities and we also have been affected, our economy as well as the businesses. However, as we look into the future and we start opening up, we see that Hong Kong remains a very, very important hub. And as we've gone through many crises before, of course, nothing unlike to this one, Hong Kong remains very robust and also is able to undertake some of that to moving forward. So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is to really talk about the business environment here, and also my colleagues will share some of the success stories in Australia and New Zealand and the UK. So to begin with, I'd like to talk about the Invest Hong Kong. Very firstly, Invest Hong Kong is a government department in charge of inward foreign direct investments. We help companies plan and in terms of their business, so that we provide information which is relevant and hopefully impactful for them to continue with their planning. And in their setup as well, we help with facilitation of work visa and schooling and getting a license and so on. And we also help them launch their business in Hong Kong through networking events and also connection with service providers and potential partners, and also helping them with expansion and when they are set up here. We believe that in terms of the Hong Kong structure, if we were to go through that, there are some very important pillars of the economy that remain very, very important, namely financial service. Hong Kong is a global financial center where 18% of our GDP is financial services, with 230 plus thousand professionals in financial services. And of course, business professional service sectors are very important in Hong Kong because they support, they're the backbone that support all the Hong Kong as a service economy. We have also creative industries, consumer products, tourism, hospitality, and transport. These are what we call the sort of the backbone, the pillars of the economy in Hong Kong. And of course, as with the innovation technology side of things, we see a huge opportunity in the areas of innovation. And whether they are part of AI, robotics, health tech, or fintech, we see a very big sort of advantage coming up for these companies in these sectors. And of course, the traditional sectors or pillars of the economy, like I mentioned earlier, the financial services, creative industries, business professional service, consumer products, tourism, hospitality, and transport. All of these sectors, actually, they use technology as an enabler. So all in all, we see Hong Kong businesses adopting technology very much, because when companies come in here, they would use Hong Kong as a kind of a living lab for testing new things. And also coming to Hong Kong to using Hong Kong as a showcase, and also as a regional or global launch pad, not only to get into the mainland business, the second largest economy in the world, but also to reach out to other markets in the region. And so this is a very important element. And this is very cross-cutting, because every sector of businesses, of clients that we help and we support, they are interested in somehow selling either their products or services, or distributing their services to the mainland, or buying something from the mainland. And also, of course, the other countries in the region as well. And aftercare is also a very important part of our work, because there are a lot of companies, when they come here, they're looking to expand in other markets as well. And this is something that also set up other businesses to strengthen their business models, to take advantage of the opportunities in other areas which are kind of related to the current business models that they have. And a lot of the companies also come here to do strategic research, which are, the government is putting a lot of efforts in terms of developing this whole area of innovation and technology, about almost over $13 billion US to foster the whole innovation and technology platform. If you look at this kind of landscape of Hong Kong, we have over 9,000 companies basically that use Hong Kong as a sort of base, and over 1,500 companies that use Hong Kong as a regional headquarters. And these numbers are up by more than 9% from 2017. And these are very important companies. And when we see the landscape, we see the 5 major sources of parent companies coming from the mainland of China, Japan, US, the UK, and Singapore. And Australia actually is also part of the top 10. And very importantly, as we see it, companies, when they come here, they look for different business opportunities. They come here for accessing new markets. They come here to access funding. And in terms of funding, the government has a very generous support for funding. You can go to the website of Start Me Up Hong Kong website, and you can see the list of funding, which is quite substantial. And also the funding not only from the government, but also funding for businesses from the private sector, whether you're looking for seed money or angel or VC, up to Series A, B, C, or private equity, and all the way to listing a company in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the place really for people to access funding. So access to new markets, access to funding, access to talent as well, because we have people here who are trilingual, who can manage and work with globally, but also with the mainland and the rest of Asia. And finally, the other very big element they come here for is looking for distribution and also access to production, whether it is sort of access to production in the Asia Pacific region or in India, in Bangladesh, or as far also in the mainland for sort of high level smart manufacturing type of products. They would come here for that to do their supply chain logistics. And of course, the business models are changing as we speak because of all the changes happening in the world. But nevertheless, I think that when you think about when you talk to these people, primarily these are the sort of topics that they're coming here for. The other very important part is that we have a lot of SMEs here, in addition to the large corporates. We have over 350,000 small, medium enterprises across different sectors. And SMEs represent a huge part of the whole economy. 98% of our GDP is really SMEs. And we've had a record number of jobs, record in terms of jobs creation in the last couple of years, 11% increase. So if you also look at the business, the type of businesses they do, the major lines of business, as I mentioned earlier, is import-export, trade, wholesale and retail, supply chain logistics, which constitute a huge part of that. Financing and banking obviously is a very important part as a global financial center. And business professional service, also the type of marketing consulting firms, all sorts of education-related services, also very important, because these are also the backbone of it, whether they are IT professional services or marketing professional services, management professional services, accountants, lawyers, and so on, very important. And transportation and storage and courier services, which basically are kind of the pillars of the economy. And as I mentioned earlier, there's now these new innovation technology companies coming into Hong Kong to provide the services and taking advantage of what's happening here. Of course, the low tax and simple tax regime really helps a lot, the free flow of information, Hong Kong's free port status, and also the geographic location is very important. In my next slide, which I will show you now, is that one of the, if you look at this map, location is very key. We are right surrounded by half the world's population, live within 5 hours flight of Hong Kong. And of course, the markets around in the region are very, very important. They're all growth markets, as you can see. And in this post-COVID world, to echo what Dario was saying, I think that Asia is starting to come out of it, and we're going to see some quite substantial growth potential in this part of the world. So we would encourage you to really look at it if you're looking about growth potential in your next phase of your journey. The rule of law, very important under the one country two system as part of China. We have this common law system, which means that, you know, as one of the world's freest economies in the world, we are always on the top 1 or 2 top economies in the world, and for the last 25 years. And very importantly, where the common law system, which you all work with, whether it is Australia, New Zealand, or the UK, English is one of the official languages. And under the one country two system, you really get the best of both worlds, meaning that having access to mainland China, but also having access to the region and ASEAN and India, Japan, and Korea. So under the one country two system, you have freedom of speech, movement of capital, freedom of movement of capital, of course, of people and of goods itself. Hong Kong is a free port on its own right. One of the major other areas which I think would be of interest to you to know is that we have a very low and simple tax regime. So for the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars, 200,000 euro profit that you make in Hong Kong, you will be taxed only at 8.25% corporate tax. And there's a 2-tier tax system which kicks in after the first $2 million profit. then you go back to the normal 16.5% tax, which also remains one of the lowest simple tax regimes in the world. There's no GST or value-added tax or global sales tax. There's no tax on capital gains, no withholding tax on investments, no estate duty tax, and no tax on wine as well, no duty on wine as well, which I think is a very interesting initiative that the government has done over 12 years ago, and now we've seen the benefit of it, where Hong Kong is one of the capitals for that, and it has created a lot of interesting businesses for people in the F&B business. Also, we have signed double taxation agreements with 43 jurisdictions already, and there are 14 jurisdictions in discussions. So this is something which really, as a platform for business, when you're looking at that, most people would use Hong Kong as their profit center, as one of their profit centers to really leverage on the low and simple tax regime. The other thing I would like to talk to you very quickly before I finish my part of the presentation is to talk about the startup ecosystem. This is something which is, Hong Kong is a very vibrant ecosystem in startup. Of course, we are seeing a lot of changes happening because of all the changes in the environment happening, but Hong Kong remains a very, very important and vibrant ecosystem for startups. We see a strong network of incubators, accelerators, incubation labs, innovation labs, but also very importantly, as I mentioned to you earlier, is the pool of experienced investors, whether they are for seed money, for angel, VCs, and all the way to private equity. We have a very strong, robust pool of investors that would be very interested in investing in successful business models. And Hong Kong is a really great place for, if your business model is a proven one and it's a great one, you should be able to get funding. And this is something that we pride ourselves, and we will connect you with groups of investors and so on and so forth to start with. We also have very strong government-backed programs, which has very comprehensive funding for the startups and for the SMEs, so that they can really start with that. And of course, with the COVID program, for those who are established in Hong Kong, there's a whole host of very excellent programs support programs that the government has come up with to support the businesses based in Hong Kong to survive and to go through the challenges that we're facing. We do a survey every year, and as of last year in November, we have over 3,100 plus startups, and employing over 12,000, almost 12,500 people. And these are originated over 30%, 34% are from all over the world. And this is what makes us a very unique ecosystem, with about 60% Hong Kongers, 7% returnees, and 34% from all over the world. And when you come here, it's almost like a mini United Nations. You have people from all over the world using Hong Kong as a base to launch their products, to launch their services and businesses. And of course, in terms of the startup ecosystem, when we look at the survey, fintech takes the lead. There's a lot of e-commerce, supply chain management, logistics, technology businesses, ICT business, design, and consulting businesses. And these are all startups, medium to growth stage startups that are coming to Hong Kong to get funding, to access new markets, and also access the production wherever they need it in the supply chain logistics. So just to finish off, we are having a very exciting startup festival. It's going to be all online. This is the first time we're doing a full virtual week-long Start Me Up Hong Kong Festival from the 6th to the 11th of July. There will be every day. Please go into the Start Me Up Hong Kong website. You will see all the benefits that are there, but also you will see the description of all the events and the timing of it. We're finalizing this exciting program. This is the first time we will do that, and without having to travel, we can all go online and go into it and really get to hear exciting discussions on the connected cities, the retail experiences, the Impact Summit for startups, lifestyle tech, and also the ecosystem of startups on that day. So there will be 6 days of extravaganza, virtually, all virtual, that will be brought to you by the Start Me Up Festival 2020. And last but not least, we also just wanted to highlight this for you, for those who are in fintech, because fintech cuts across different sectors. There will be a physical, and also we hope that by then things will be back a bit more to normal. So we are hoping to have this physical event together with the virtual event. And this is the first time we're going to do a B2B, but also there will be a big B2C element. So the first time we'll be experiencing in the Hong Kong FinTech Week 2020 a physical event and then also a virtual event that will be connecting you. For those of you who won't be able to come here physically, you can also access that and learn a lot about the insight of and opportunities here. So I'd like to stop here, and I believe my colleague from Australia, New Zealand, Luca, will be following up on that. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you all for attending today's in my presentation. I would like to give you some information on why Hong Kong is important for Australia and New Zealand companies. Charles has mentioned already about some advantages of Hong Kong, but to elaborate further, so Hong Kong represents a great springboard for our businesses. So Hong Kong and Australia and New Zealand maintain strong economic and investment ties. Australia and New Zealand are main sources of inward direct investment into Hong Kong. So in terms of trade, Hong Kong is Australia and New Zealand's one of the largest merchandise and services trading partner, and one of the largest export market for goods. So just to give you an example, major Australian exports to Hong Kong are gold, edible products and preparations, so telecom equipment, parts and fruits. Major New Zealand exports to Hong Kong are dairy, wood, meat, fruits and nuts. Australia, New Zealand's major services export to Hong Kong includes transport services and personal travel. But at the same time, I would say Hong Kong is a good place for Australian, New Zealand companies to operate to and from China. China is the largest trading partner for both Australia and New Zealand for goods and services. So for those reasons, many companies from this part of the world decided to have a physical presence in Hong Kong in order to manage their business on the ground. So Charles mentioned about our survey conducted by Invest Hong Kong last year. So there are in Hong Kong at the moment there are 185 Australian companies with 35 regional headquarters, 54 regional offices, and 96 local offices. In addition, we have around 100,000 Australians live in Hong Kong. So, but why Hong Kong is important? It's important for us. Charles mentioned a few important aspects already of Hong Kong. So the strategic position, the low and simple tax regime, the world-class infrastructure, fully connected to the global markets, and the free flow of information, capital, people, and goods. But Hong Kong is the natural and safe, I would say, launchpad for Australian New Zealand businesses to expand their reach to mainland China, but also to ASEAN, the ASEAN countries, thanks to our cultural similarity, geographical proximity, and extensive experience in doing business in the mainland. So, and also the Greater Bay Area. The Greater Bay Area as the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, say connectivity. Hong Kong offers Australian and New Zealand businesses significant opportunities that can be most effectively captured through their presence in Hong Kong. And then the free trade agreement. So Hong Kong and Australia signed a free trade agreement and an investment agreement last year, the 26th of March 2019, that made a significant milestone in our already substantial trade and investment relationship. So the agreements entered into force this January, on the 17th, 2020. New Zealand, on the other hand, signed a free trade agreement with Hong Kong in November 2008. So next slide, please. Oh, here we go. So about our success stories. So first of all, about our main sectors, all the companies we are dealing with that, generally speaking, show the interest to move to Hong Kong and the mainland. So business professional services is one of the biggest sector. So which includes education, real estate, legal firms, accounting firms, and so on. Tourism and hospitality, food and beverage, and travel services. Creative industries, very important, with engineering firms or art and design. And technology. Technology is becoming very important for us. Many startups and also companies that work already in the space are contacting us because of the ecosystem, because of what Charles said earlier. So the great ecosystem, the infrastructure, and the financial support, both private and provided by the government in Hong Kong. So going through so I would like to quickly mention about a few success stories. So a company that have been assisted by our office here in Australia. So I would say big guys are there already. So most of them assisted by Invest Hong Kong in the past years. And for example, Qantas Airlines or Westpac Bank, Telstra, Woolworths, Target Australia, just to name a few. Some leading New Zealand companies operating in Hong Kong include Mainfreight Logistics, Gallagher Technologies, and Air New Zealand. So they have established their presence many years ago. But Hong Kong is not only for big corporations. We have helped medium-sized companies or startups to expand in Hong Kong. So in the last, just to give you an example, in the last 5 years, more than 100 companies from Australia and New Zealand have been helped by Invest Hong Kong. So I would like to give you a few examples of startups and medium enterprises that successfully succeed in Hong Kong recently and are still operating in this, I would say, challenging time. I don't go through each single one, just mention a few. For example, Place Architects. Place Architects is a team of international architects in commercial urban mixed-use projects. Its Hong Kong office acts as the regional headquarters to provide the full, I would say, spectrum of architectural design services to Asia markets, with a particular emphasis on the Greater Bay Area, mainland China, Southeast Asia market. Or Byte bite society. So Hong Kong is a fast-growing pioneer market for vegan foods. So many famous brands have chosen Hong Kong for the launch of new products. Just a few example, Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods, and now Bite Society is a small entity, a small company, but a very incredible product. So it's they have this vegan milky chalk balls and chalk blocks. So the company decided to make Hong Kong is its first market for sales outside of Australia, and it's an ideal place to enter the wider Asian markets. And Hong Kong consumers at the same time are getting more eager for more not dairy and plant-based options. Another one, OFX. OFX is an international payments platform that offers round-the-clock transfers and customer support. So OFX transfers money to over 197 countries in more than 50 different currencies, connecting customers through an established and fully regulated banking network worldwide. And most transfers are delivered within a couple days. So it's an incredible story. Originally founded in a garage in Sydney here, and today they have 7 offices around the globe, including Hong Kong as an Asian footprint. So they choose Hong Kong as one of their international offices. Why? But thanks to the Hong Kong's simple tax system, the solid infrastructure, business stability, and also because Hong Kong provides a good base for exploring opportunities in mainland China. In addition, Hong Kong for them is important as a key global financial hub. Last one, Liverton from New Zealand. Liverton Technology Group is a company from Auckland, if I recall, with offices here in Australia, New Zealand, and United States. The company has recently set up the headquarters in Hong Kong. What they do, Liverton offers 4 types of solutions, including security, automation, ISP networking, and IDR 3G and 4G mobile Wi-Fi. So the company develops cutting-edge solutions to help its client solving business pain points. Liverton is rapidly growing in Asia, particularly with its automation solutions, servicing the well-known hospitality brands in the region. So to conclude, in this challenging time, I think I've noticed that Australian New Zealand companies have started to work on a different strategy to be prepared for a new scenario. So if Hong Kong is in your radar, please don't hesitate to contact our office in Sydney. We are more than happy to provide you assistance. Charles mentioned it's all free of charge, so you can contact us at any time. And we're ready to start this journey together. So thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Andrew Davis. I head the Invest Hong Kong London office, and just covering off the UK. It's interesting, I suppose, because one of the oldest Invest Hong Kong offices it is the busiest, and this comes because of the long historic links between the UK and Hong Kong, almost 180 years. And as a result of that, I think in the last 3 years, we've seen over 112 UK companies set up in Hong Kong with the help of Invest Hong Kong. There are, of course, a huge number of UK companies based there, over 800. Part of that comes from the fact that there's a lot of built-in support in it, as well as the Hong Kong government. You've also got people like the British Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, the Department of International Trade. So all of this provides a very good UK ecosystem to support new businesses setting up there. The sectors cover a wide range, basically every single one, from financial services through to food and beverage. And they're targeting not just the Hong Kong market, but also the mainland, as well as regional markets. So from Hong Kong, that ability to easily get to Tokyo or Beijing really enhances the offering of Hong Kong. As I said, the why is the historic links, the strategic location, and also the fact that the legal and accounting systems are very much the same as they would find in the UK. Plus, you've got this low and simple tax regime that really makes for the ease of doing business, which really attracts people. We've already, my colleagues have already talked about the free flow of capital, information, and free speech, but also access to the English language and a trilingual workforce. So this, plays into the talent pool and the ease of bringing people from the UK. I'll touch on that when I talk about how our client, one of our clients, has done that. There are issues. I mean, the past year has been very difficult, and if you forgive the expression, COVID-19 has been the icing on the cake. At this end, of course, UK companies have faced a lot of issues around Brexit and the state of the UK economy. But all of this has still seen large numbers of UK companies going to Hong Kong, setting up there and being successful. And I think that's one of the things that Invest Hong Kong really needs to see, is successful companies. And we've been very keen to do that. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, it's a wide variety of companies, as I said. So I've highlighted a few that come from a lot of different sectors. Firstly, you have eBury, one of Europe's leading fintech companies working in the space of trade, foreign exchange. They started up in Hong Kong about 18 months ago, 20 people, all locally sourced. They didn't feel the need to send anyone over from the UK. They trained people in Hong Kong to do their business, and they've been very successful. And this, of course, is very much a typical UK fintech, which has its roots in Spain, set up in London, and has now expanded globally. Bar and Ray were one of my clients in Hong Kong when I was based there, and it typifies the very interesting and technological approach SMEs in the UK bring to Asia. They came out with one guy from the UK and now employ over 10 people designing the high-end pools and spas for luxury hotels right around Asia, Macau, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, right the way across from their base in Hong Kong, and very successfully done with, again, local talent. Mesolabs are a more recent investment into Hong Kong, set up from London, the UK, doing data analytics, particularly in the space of websites, creative industries, and retail. Again, found someone locally to employ and started from that one person. They've built a business right across Asia in the space of about 18 months, really doing well because they picked the right person. And it is that thing I think that most companies will find, is that picking the right staff really enhances your business from the get-go. They've won business in Singapore without actually marketing themselves in Singapore because of the reputation they've gained in Hong Kong. Interestingly, this and other clients who come in the data analytics space have found that Europe is further ahead on the curve on data analytics than Asia, and have done very well as a result. CMAR are a construction software company from Gloucestershire. They came in with last year and have steadily built their business around the construction industry, because their software is actually one of those that's allocated by the Hong Kong government as necessary for any construction project in Hong Kong. So they've got a ready built market, but they need to build on that. And so they've done that by gradually expanding into Hong Kong and taking it from there. Design House Liberty, DH Liberty, are an upmarket architectural business specializing in lifestyle and interior design, started by a very dynamic Taiwanese American lady based in London. They have sort of taken the world by storm, both in Hong Kong and in the mainland. And this step there allowed them to service the needs of their clients much more quickly than they could do if they were based in London only. And from that, they built their network, they built their relationships, and that's how it works. And finally, Fortnum & Mason, a brand well known to most people, expanded into Hong Kong last year in partnership with one of the big landlords, have an amazing facility in Kowloon, and that includes both a retail and an F&B solution. Invest Hong Kong helped them on issues such as labeling, recruitment of local staff. So with all of these clients, the London office, as well as our sector team colleagues in Hong Kong, have provided a connection and a relationship to help these businesses grow, because that's what we want, very successful businesses in Hong Kong. So thank you very much indeed. If anybody needs to speak to someone, all my colleagues from our FinTech team, which is Keith Moses, Jessica Cam, and Stephanie Poon are on the line. Please contact us through the London office.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll take back the baton. I'm Dario Conci. I'm the Managing Director for Oxford for Southeast Asia. And today I will be presenting together with Francesco Montonati, our Associate Director based in Hong Kong. We will be describing how to conduct business in Hong Kong, how to use Hong Kong as a springboard to the rest of Asia. And Francesco will also be highlighting those measures, effective and efficient measures that a proactive government like the Hong Kong government has implemented to help companies in this moment of crisis. Oxford is an international corporate services provider. We are a UK headquartered firm. We have offices in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Changshu for Asia, and we have Milan, Jersey, and London. We assist all sectors and a wide spectrum of different size companies, from startups to SMEs to FTSE listed and multinational companies. The spectrum of services we offer goes from incorporation of various vehicles, company secretarial, accounting, management reporting, taxation, payroll, and immigration. In a nutshell, our vocation is to take away the burden from foreign companies that want to establish in Hong Kong or in Asia, the burden of their administrative, accounting, and corporate part, allowing the companies basically concentrate on what they do best, which is expanding, growing, finding new opportunities, and approaching and nurturing new clients. We will start our presentation, I think, with a section whereby we highlight two words: crossroads and holding. Why I say crossroads? Well, I typically divide jurisdictions in Asia between destination jurisdictions and crossroad jurisdictions. So destination jurisdictions are typically jurisdictions where a foreign company would go, for example, and establish a factory, a manufacturing facility, or where it has a huge market to approach. A crossroad jurisdiction is instead a jurisdiction which, by its own characteristics, would allow you, by establishing in such jurisdiction, to touch many other jurisdictions. Hong Kong is actually the best, has been historically, and it is the best performer among these crossroad jurisdictions, because it's a marketplace. Big decision makers are based in Hong Kong. All companies from Asia have somehow a presence in Hong Kong, because it's a marketplace whereby they can find and create opportunities. But in addition to this, Hong Kong is actually a very efficient holding jurisdiction. And therefore, the proposition that we would like to share with you today is not only to look at Hong Kong as a place to conduct your own business, to find your clients, but to use also the characteristics of Hong Kong to springboard into other jurisdictions, namely China, but also the rest of Asia, ASEAN, Korea, and so on and so forth. The main reasons that actually we should consider to understand why we can use Hong Kong as a holding jurisdiction, I did actually learn them in my past, as I started in Hong Kong in 2003, working in an international law firm. And in that international law firm, we were assisting companies from all over the world that wanted to invest in China, but they did so through Hong Kong. Most of fashion brands, manufacturing companies that then look at China as the target market where to open shops or to open a factory did actually found Hong Kong as a very interesting jurisdiction to set up a regional headquarters, to use Hong Kong as the trading hub for the productions made in China or elsewhere. And the reasons are that Hong Kong represents a very good buffer between your headquarters and jurisdictions which are a little bit more complex and potentially risky, like China or some Southeast Asia jurisdictions. Therefore, if anything goes wrong in those jurisdictions or in China, the consequences will stop at the holding level at Hong Kong, and it will not touch the headquarters. If you set up a company in China, it will be easier and the process will be streamlined if you do so using your Hong Kong holding vehicle. If thereafter you wish to dispose your Chinese activities, it will be easier to dispose, to sell those activities, those companies, by selling your Hong Kong vehicle. If you transfer shares at the China level, for example, it will take months. You will have to deal with complex authorities that will have potentially also discretionary powers to decide, for example, on the consideration of sale of the assets. Whilst if you use Hong Kong, if you sell your Hong Kong vehicle, it can be done in just a few days with a streamlined and simple and non-costly process. And finally, as already mentioned by Charles and other colleagues of Invest Hong Kong, Luca and Andrew, an extensive network of double taxation agreements. And this, at the end of the day, means that you will have a more efficient tax chain. So if you have a company in China and that company distributes dividends into Hong Kong, you will have the benefits of the double taxation agreement between Hong Kong and China, and thereafter you can benefit from the double taxation agreement between Hong Kong and Australia, for example, or Hong Kong and the UK. But it doesn't restrict to this. Hong Kong is actually a perfect jurisdiction to establish a joint venture. So if you have a joint venture partner from China, for example, you would want to consider Hong Kong to establish the marriage, their joint venture relationship. And why? Because Hong Kong is a common law jurisdiction. Is efficient, is certain. The commercial and corporate framework, again, is extremely simplified and extremely efficient. If things turn sour and you need to look at dispute resolution, then Hong Kong is the best arbitration and court place to have a dispute resolution mechanism being resolved. And this is the reason why we did establish for so many of our clients joint ventures in Hong Kong that thereafter established subsidiaries in China or in other parts of Asia. Because if something went wrong, or even if things don't go wrong, if simply you have to implement the articles of your JV agreement, of your shareholders agreement, let's say a call, a put option, a default mechanism, or a deadlock provision, you rather have that resolved in Hong Kong or implemented in Hong Kong than, for example, in China or other jurisdictions. Vision. I think the Greater Bay Area, which Luca and Andrew mentioned before, it's actually one of the best examples of the visionary approach that the Chinese and the Hong Kong government have and always had. The Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area is a policy initiative that seeks to promote closer cooperation and coordination between 11 cities of the Pearl River Delta. All cities that are located in southern China. And the goal, the scope, is to better leverage their competitive advantages in the context of the global economy. So the idea is to compete with big areas like the San Francisco Bay Area, Tokyo, and New York Bay Area. In a nutshell, these 11 cities are very powerful, very strong cities with very strong characteristics and all different among themselves. If we look at places like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Foshan, and Zhuhai, they all are very strong in specific areas. We have cities that are strong in tanneries, cities that are strong in toys, cities that are strong in electronics, white goods, Shenzhen, startups and fintech, Hong Kong, financial institutions, capital markets, logistics, and professional services. So in this context, Hong Kong is placed to be the beacon of capital markets, of financing your venture, of logistics and trading, whilst the manufacturing part will be in other cities of the Greater Bay Area. In this context, there is a great push to transform the Greater Bay Area into the next Silicon Valley. So the Hong Kong and Chinese government approach this from all the relevant point of views, which is the infrastructure. They built the bridge that connects Zhuhai, Macau, and Hong Kong. Talent pool. Hong Kong has 5 universities, highly ranked among the top 100 in the world. And 2 of them are in the top 10 for artificial intelligence research. Financing, capital that's been provided, and market opportunities. All the headquarters of the big tech companies are placed in the Greater Bay Area. Now, once we have established that being in Hong Kong is probably an advantageous move, we will discuss about setting up a presence in Hong Kong. I would just say that to set up a company, I'll start like this. You can do it in 1 day. In less than 1 day, you will have set up your subsidiary in Hong Kong. Now, the options available are quite simple: a limited liability company or a branch office or a representative office. Incorporating a limited liability company is very simple, as I said. Business scope, any business scope, no restrictions. Share capital, $1 minimum. Timing, conservative, we say 1 week. In reality, it's going to be 1 day. Registered office requirements, it can be domiciled with a professional firm. You just need 1 shareholder and there is no need for that shareholder to be resident in Hong Kong. So it can be clearly 100% subsidiary of your UK, Australian company, for example. And in the board of directors, you just need one director, and it does not need to be resident in Hong Kong. Whilst, for example, in other jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, or for example, also in Singapore, you need to have a resident director, which adds a level of complication and adds potentially costs. The only other mandatory requirement is to have a company secretary, and in case of a branch, a designated representative or tax representative. So a company limited by shares, a limited liability company, is subject to taxation, and Francesco will later discuss about the taxation part. You will have a yearly audit financial statement requirement. The article of association are standard, are provided by the company's registry, and you will be in the position to pay dividends to shareholders. A subsidiary company is a separate legal entity from the mother company, and this means that any liability incurred in Hong Kong in your subsidiary will not go and flow upwards to the shareholder. When you establish the company, the company name must be approved by the company's registry. You, as I said, don't need to have a specific identity of the shareholder. You can have just one shareholder. It can be a foreigner, and you have a maximum of 50 shareholders. A branch office is a solution which is seldom adopted. However, there are companies that decide to set up a branch because if they need to, for example, apply for a banking license, they need to meet the requirements of the financial regulator, and therefore they set up a branch which is an extension of the mother company. It's not a separate legal entity, to take advantage of the characteristics of the mother company. If you really want to start light, extremely light, there is also the opportunity of setting up or registering a representative office, which gives the opportunity to foreign companies to do promotion, liaison, market research, and basically understand if you have a market for yourself in Hong Kong. And thereafter, if you have a market, you will upgrade, you will establish the subsidiary limited liability company, as the only limitation of the representative office is that it cannot conduct business activity, it cannot conduct sales, and so on, so forth. I will pass now the word to Francesco to give us a description about the tax and the accounting part, but I will just mention, to give you an idea of the simplicity and efficiency of the Hong Kong system, filing tax is something very simple. But notwithstanding this, if your tax filing is not made in an efficient way, the Hong Kong authorities will typically come back to you within a short time frame and suggest which is the best way to make the tax filing and to allocate the various incomes in order to achieve the best tax rate. I come from Italy, we come from Europe, and we know that this is actually something unheard of in our jurisdictions. Francesco, over to you.
Thank you, Dario. Let me share the screen right now. All right, so I want you to introduce a little bit more some of the tax tools which are already in place in Hong Kong, just to give you a more in-depth analysis of the tax framework over there, as well as then give you updates on the more recent measures introduced by the Hong Kong government during this COVID time. First of all, already briefly mentioned by Charles earlier on during the presentation, an overview of the tax regime in Hong Kong. As already said, quite straightforward, no VAT, there's no taxes to be paid on dividend payouts, there's no capital gain, a fair, simple and straightforward regime on royalties if the Hong Kong company has to pay them out to a foreign entity, and as well the profit tax, which has now recently been split into two tax regimes, and this has really been a game changer since the last year of assessment, and really I would say concrete measure from the Hong Kong authorities to boost SMEs in establish and say flourish in Hong Kong. Another overview of the tax regime, as you can see, we have this two-tier tax regime of 825 and 16.5, and for unincorporated businesses there are similarly proportions, and again, no dividends, no taxes to be paid on dividends or on foreign sourced income. So the whole, in a nutshell, the Hong Kong tax regime works on a territoriality principle. So Hong Kong will tax only that income that has been derived from or arising from activities carried out in Hong Kong, not from overseas. A brief overview on the tax regime for individuals in Hong Kong, and this may come as a surprise. The regime is quite low, has been further lowered since the previous year of assessment into 5 different thresholds, as you can see here. And this is an advantage when you want to hire skilled workforce in Hong Kong compared to other European, or even, I just think of mainland China jurisdictions, where the company cost on top of the net salary that you have to pay to the employees can even reach 45% of that net income. Instead, in Hong Kong, we have a fair, advantageous tax rates for individuals as well. And if we consider the social insurance, let's say social contributions to be paid in Hong Kong, this is also play as a great advantage of Hong Kong. There is a minimum rate to contribute for pensions, the local pension scheme. So really, you can source a skilled workforce over there or transfer from overseas and maximize the net income for the employee, avoiding high additional company costs on your local workforce. As we mentioned, in the last 2 years, the biggest let's say update development from the tax standpoint is the introduction of this 2-tier profit tax regime, which allows company to pay only 8.25% on their first 2 million profit and the full 16.5% on any remaining profit. And in this regard, I have prepared let's say a quick comparison to just make you understand how big of a game changer this was. And again, applause to the Hong Kong government for having done something like that to boost the SME environment and the startups as well, which especially at the beginning, you want to save every dollar you can to boost your business and avoid, let's say, administrative or fiscal costs. And we can see in this slide, in the year of assessment 17-18, if you were an SME and you had a 1.5 million profit, you would end up paying more than 200,000 Hong Kong dollars on that gross profit before tax. In the 2018-19 and onwards, so now you would pay exactly half of that amount. That's a net saving of more than 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. And the same is true also if you, in this example, we can see, let's say you have a profit of 3 million Hong Kong dollars. So typically for an SME in Hong Kong, until 2018, you would have paid around 465,000 Hong Kong dollars as a tax on that amount. Whereas in the subsequent year of assessment, and even in the current one and in the future ones, you would end up paying more than 150,000 Hong Kong dollars less. So really a boost for SMEs, a great welcome from Hong Kong to small, medium companies to establish their business there. Not only the 2-tier profit tax regime, Hong Kong tax system has a whole set of tax tools, let's say, that can allow you to navigate through delicate times and as well, again, maximize your profit and avoid the tax burden. I put this as an example, the holdover of provisional tax. So Hong Kong will allow you to put on hold, basically, the payment of the provisional tax for the subsequent year of assessments. It's a straightforward and easy application to do. And on top of this, I must also mention, you can pay your tax by installment on a 6 months or 12 months payment schedule with just a 5% interest rate to be applied on that. There are cases where you can always, as Dario said before, have a direct and straight dialogue with the local tax authority, which is called the Inland Revenue Department. So again, the whole system is set for you and give you even in normal times, the right tools to have again, livable activity in Hong Kong without avoiding all the typical burden that is familiar. Many of you probably are familiar with say European or other Southeast Asian jurisdictions. There are other measures as well. So on the other side for individuals as well, if you have expats that you're planning to move from your overseas headquarters into Hong Kong so that they can manage the initial phases of your business there, and you're worried about the again the high rents in Hong Kong, that high rent may come as an advantage, as the tax burden on costs for housing provided to the employees can play at their advantage, in a nutshell, basically, and you can only pay a figurative amount of that to, again, help the company save cost, maximize the employees' profits, and reduce the tax burden, this time on the employees' side. So again, maximize the net, reduce the company cost on labor force. And here I've just made an example of how much you can, how this work and how you can maximize that. Talking to visa, so moving employees to Hong Kong, the regime is quite straightforward. Typically, an application would last from 6 to 8 weeks, or even less if the company is already established. The first application may take a little bit longer because the local immigration department wants to know you better. Invest Hong Kong is really supportive in this during the applications. And as you can see, we have mostly 4 different types of visas. Employment, so that's for your workforce to be moved there. Investment, that's when you want to move straight to Hong Kong and open your own business over there. And then the say less typical dependent visa, that's for again, family members and so forth. In current times, visa can still be applied for regardless of the restrictions that there are in place for foreigners coming to Hong Kong. So only visitors currently are not allowed to enter Hong Kong, and we hope this measure will be lifted soon. But if you plan to establish the company there and move one of your employees there, you will not be forbidden to do that. The whole visa application can be managed from remote. So the employees, the perspective, let's say, Hong Kong employees that you want to move there, does not need to be in Hong Kong. Throughout the whole process, it can be managed from remote. The visa gets obtained, you mail it to his home address, and then he comes to Hong Kong with the visa in hand. He will be allowed to enter, because at that moment he would have become a resident. So if you're planning to move workforce in Hong Kong with the current set of limitations that are being applied from Hong Kong, those will not prevent you to do that. So Hong Kong is open for business in this sense. All right, and skipping to the more recent measures that the Hong Kong government has implemented, these are countless and quite straightforward and easy to apply. Just to give you an example, between the month of April, the Hong Kong government introduced a retail subsidy scheme, which is already closed, and the application could have been done online. Just upload a few of the company documents there, and the Hong Kong government will grant an 80,000 subsidy for store that you would have. So we have had many companies apply. It was straightforward. Many of those companies have already received the funds from the Hong Kong government directly credited into the company's bank account. So Hong Kong is really trying to cut all the waiting time and have the supporting measures arrive to the companies as early as possible. A special new measure that they have introduced just on the current year is to further cut the tax, and they have provided a 100% waiver of the profit tax, provided that with a cap at 20,000. This before was set at 75%. They have increased it of a further 25%, and it will apply to the current year of assessment, provided there the budget measures are approved, and we highly expect that to be the case. There has been a one-off cash payout to local, to permanent residents, and the government will tentatively pay this directly into their bank accounts in this upcoming summertime. And there has been a waiver of the cost for business registration and annual return renewals. These are, let's say, the statutory yearly filings that each company has to file with the local Inland Revenue Department and with the local company's registry, respectively. The cost of the BR was typically around 2,000 Hong Kong dollars. This has been waived for the whole year 2020-2021, and we are expecting the cost for renewal of the NAR1, which is lower in amount, is around $105, to be also waived. So again, wherever possible, the Hong Kong government tried to cut the administrative costs to sustain business and encourage companies to open up their business in Hong Kong, regardless of the whole, say, restriction that we're all experiencing for the COVID outbreak. And to further boost employment and keep occupation level high in Hong Kong, the government has just announced and already approved a couple of weeks ago a new support scheme for employment. So if you are a company in Hong Kong and you're struggling to keep your workforce, the Hong Kong government will cover 50% of your current workforce salary with a ceiling of 18,000 salary. That means that for each employee that you have, you will be eligible to get up to 9,000 Hong Kong dollars. This will be, let's say, activated in the upcoming weeks, and we expect it to be open for applications between end of May and early June, and that will be the first set. There will be a second round for the same measures, probably expected around end of August and early September. And once again, just a hint to how the Hong Kong government wants to sail out of the current COVID situation as soon as possible, and has already put in place concrete measures to help sustain the business in Hong Kong. Just add further information on the scheme, and without again much difficulty, you can apply for this. Thank you very much, and I give back the floor to Dario, I think.
Thank you, Francesco. We have received a couple of questions, and the first one that I would like to share with our panelists is: how do you think the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area plan would enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness? I would suggest, Charles, if you agree, if you could give us your take.
Sure, Dario. Thank you very much for your question. Actually, you know, it's quite amazing, actually, very unique in terms of the what we call the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau area, in short, the GBA for the whole name. If you look at it around the world, this is really a unique situation. There's no other centers or hubs in the world that can match this, because if you were to think about it in the US context, for example, you would put New York, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Texas together, all within 1 hour reach. The Bay Area really uniquely enhances Hong Kong's competitive by 200-fold, in regards to the fact that, as we discussed earlier, Hong Kong is a global financial center, an international innovation technology hub, and coupled with Shenzhen, which is the capital of hardware, electronics, and with the manufacturing, the pockets of manufacturing of all kinds of products and types of services around in the Greater Bay Area. And within 1 hour, all of this, within 1 hour, you can reach a population of 71 million people, 9 cities in the Greater Bay Area plus Hong Kong and Macau. That makes 11 cities with 11 million people, with an economy of 1.7, close to 1.7 trillion US dollars. And the forecast by far for the next 15 years or so, it's going to be doubling in terms of GDP per capita. If that was to be compared to as a country, it would be equivalent today as this whole region would be equivalent to the Australian economy or the South Korean economy. So it gives you a kind of snapshot, and whereby, as we discussed, Hong Kong is a place where you can get financing, and where you use Hong Kong as a city to do your research and ideation to commercialization, and then production and supply chain logistics and managing it from the Greater Bay Area. So that gives you a very, very interesting and unique hub that is second to none in the world.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
We received another question, and the question is about the current situation in Hong Kong, and one of the listeners is asking us, how is Hong Kong faring during this period of virus and and the recent demonstrations. If you all agree, I would just give my take on this. And well, clearly, we do not have a crystal ball, and Hong Kong, as many other countries and cities in the world, are suffering. And clearly, Hong Kong had, in addition, the period of demonstrations that did not really help. But what I can say, given the history of Hong Kong, and that I lived through it, I was actually born in Hong Kong, and I've seen the rough and the good several times, is that Hong Kong is actually one of the most resilient cities in the world. I was here during SARS, and in those days, it actually appeared that Hong Kong was close to finishing. Asset prices went down the floor, stock market, hotels were empty, flights were empty. It was a real disaster. But what has happened right after SARS was that Hong Kong has actually experienced one of its most successful and sustained growth period ever. And therefore, I also think that in this context, once coronavirus is settled, Hong Kong will manage to pull out its strengths, which is recovering stronger than ever.
Yeah, I think that I'd like to just echo that because we've gone through every 12 to 15 years, there seemed to be a very big kind of downturn for all kinds of reasons. We see when we see every 10 to 15 years, there's a big drop and downturn. And every time for the last 40, 50 years, Hong Kong has come up stronger than ever. Of course, this time we have to, there's the complications we had in the last year with the social unrest, and that coupled with the coronavirus, that has affected a lot of businesses in regards to retail, and especially retail and the tourism business and the hotel business in particular, and some other businesses as well. But we, as Dario was saying, that in terms of resilience, I think that Hong Kong has gone through that, and we do have a robust, and we are confident that despite of all the headwinds and that we are seeing, that the world is seeing, we've never had this unprecedented crisis, health crisis and economic crisis ever. We are cautiously confident that we will actually come out of it, and we will, the resilience will demonstrate itself as well from this point.
Thank you, Charles. We have no further questions, so I hope you found interesting Charles' contribution, Lucas and Andrew's, and the description we gave you about doing business in Hong Kong. Thank you very much. You have all our contact details, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.